Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Elevate Your AIQ. Today, for this episode, I'm excited to have Isabelle Bichler, co-founder and COO of Retrain.ai. I first met Isabelle in early 2023 at the Responsible HR Summit in New York City that Retrain.ai hosted. And this event was one of the experiences that convinced me responsible AI was a critical focus area, not just for me, but for all of us trying to mitigate bias and promote fairness and ethics in our decisions. Isabelle and the Retrain.ai team are tackling one of the biggest challenges in the workforce today, which is the skills gap. In our conversation, we dive into how AI can bridge this gap responsibly, enhance human capabilities, and create more opportunities for continuous learning and growth. Isabelle also shares her thoughts on the importance of data-driven decision-making in HR, the cultural shifts needed for AI adoption, and the role of women in shaping the future of AI. This is an insightful discussion packed with ideas on how we can innovate responsibly while empowering the workforce of tomorrow. Thanks for listening. Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Elevate Your AIQ. I'm your host, Bob Pulver. With me today, I have the good fortune to speak with Isabelle Bichler. She is the co-founder and COO of Retrain.ai. How are you doing today, Isabelle?
Great, and great to be here. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Thanks for joining me. One of the first things that, we'll get into this as the conversation goes along, but certainly I've always appreciated your advocacy for responsible AI in HR and beyond, because these are decisions being made about people and their livelihoods, and it's just important we treat that with the most sensitivity. So thank you for that. Just to kick things off, why don't you just give us an introduction about your background? You've been working in and out of AI and technology for a while.
Yes. Well, in my background, I've always been in the intersection of people and tech. The first company I established many years ago when I was 24, also in HR tech, bring together contingent workforce with job opportunities. I sold it 3 years after to a big staffing company. And since then, I was actually on the other side of the table as an investor, as a wealth manager, investing in tech, early stage startups usually, but really different spaces across the board, cyber, prop tech, feed tech, and so forth. And I did this for 12 years. And since COVID hit 2020, together with my co-founders, Dr. Shay David and Avi Seymour, we established Retrain.ai to solve what we call one of the biggest problems that exists is the skills gap. And we established Retrain, and we're going to talk more about how we're helping a lot of people.
Yeah, no doubt. Thank you for that. Really, really interesting. So you've got a lot of different sort of lenses that you can look to the market, not just the client challenges, but really the broader base and where people are investing and hopefully investing in the right solutions.
I have the legal compliance side, and I did an MBA, and I also graduated from NYU. I did the Master of Science in Risk Management, which one of the research I've done there was about responsible AI, about the risks of different technologies, AI, and mitigations strategies. We're also part of the World Economic Forum, part of the it's called the Innovator Program, basically discussing and standardizing the whole domain of responsible AI, because there's many different angles to that.
Sure.
And also part of the Responsible AI Forum discussion. So it's an interesting time in terms of AI and in terms also of ethical responsible AI.
Wow, that's a lot. So one of the things that I thought we could talk about is, I think because of that broad lens that you have, that you've got an eye to, the legal, regulatory frameworks that are coming, being somewhat multicultural. I'm imagining you're traveling all over the world and you're hearing, different perspectives from clients and prospects, community members about,
Mhm.
how this is evolving. What are you hearing in terms of either similarities or differences from maybe different countries, different cultures?
I think the one thing that is always there is the problem of not having skilled talent. And this is a concern not just for companies, it's also for governments, right? To lead a country when in the era of very, very fast changes in technologies, geopolitical, um, conflicts, you could say, now that are happening all over, you definitely want to be on top of it and make sure that your citizens, your workers are productive and are efficient and have the right skills. So it was always a problem, right? But it's accelerated, and it's now something that, and COVID was part of it, also one of the factors that really accentuated that problem. So I think it's on top of mind of everybody, and of course all those stats of 77% of CEOs are thinking, are, that's a top concern, having skilled talent. And of course, it's cascading into talents, needs, and skills, right? So, and that's why we're talking. We're talking about skills intelligence, how AI is helping HRs hire faster, retain longer, and so forth. So that's what Retrain.ai are doing.
Yeah. So the skills piece, I mean, that's central to everything, right? I mean, you've got to get a better handle on not just where your current gaps might be, but does the trajectory of AI, capabilities or competencies. I'm not sure how. Curious to get your take on how you think about that. But as that comes in, it's not just like some kind of annual exercise, right? You've got to constantly be looking at who can we upskill, who can we reskill, do we have to hire net new, do we use an agent digital worker of some kind to do that. It's becoming more complicated.
And that's exactly what led us to really establish Retrain. The inception point was looking at what's going on in the market, seeing those fast changes, understanding that you could say 44%, almost half of the individual workers' skills are going to be needing a significant upskilling and reskilling until 2027 in order for us to be employable. Led
Right.
us to understand that there's a very big problem, but specifically in HR world, in enterprise HR world, there's a lot of systems. It's pretty distributed, and those systems are siloed. There's a lot of data maybe in the systems, but they're not utilized, and you don't know enough about your talent.
Yep.
And that's something that for me, I'm always, as a financial person, right? I'm
Yeah.
doing investment. I'm looking at the stock market. I'm looking at the market and different assets, and seeing the data in real time, understanding trends. And this is something that is not available for HRs. So they have a lot of data. They're sitting on tons of data, whether it's in the organization or just publicly available data, and it wasn't collected, analyzed in any way. So that was the effort that we've done, and that's how we established Retrain AI in mind of bringing data for insightful predictions and recommendations for HRs to make decisions upon.
I've had a few conversations with folks in like the talent intelligence community or the people analytics community. It seems so logical to me, and definitely logical to you because you started the company to focus on this area. But part of it seemed like it's so logical to bring this data together, and then it's really about, do you have the right culture and maybe organizational structure to make sure that you're recognizing these benefits and overcoming whatever challenges and risks may exist to get to this end state where you do have that much better and consistent, like perpetual visibility to all that insight, right?
Yeah, and for sure, it's a cultural thing, and it's also coming from an accentuated need. So you see some specific industries where they have to do something about it, and if they want to stay viable, right?
Yeah.
Healthcare, manufacturing, those changes there are critical. So those kind of factors brought those early adopters to say, "Hey, let's find a solution," and collaborate with startups that are bringing that innovation and disruption, and try and see and explore how we can solve those big problems.
Yeah, for sure. So it seems like when your clients implement this solution, I mean, you're got to be incredibly eye-opening for them, right? It's like, why did it take us so long to even, do this or whatever? I mean, any particular call outs from some of the, client feedback?
You're talking about stories, use cases of implementation.
Yeah. So I was just curious if there were some that were just like over the top, like, I can't believe we even questioned this investment, right?
Oh, for sure. So I think what we've learned is that HRs need to have very specific KPIs for them to see the value, right? It was
Yeah.
discussed in more kind of a broader, high level in the beginning, non tangible outcomes. And we bring it to depending on the use case, of course, if it's for hiring. So, what do we want to achieve? Is it hiring better people in terms of the qualified talent that they need for specific criteria? Is it the faster time to hire, bringing efficiency? Is it both? And so forth, diversity into the pipeline and so forth. Definitely what we do, and maybe I'll say a quick summary about Retrain.ai. So Retrain.ai, established 2020, we basically help HRs hire faster, retain longer, develop the workforce much better. And we're leveraging responsible AI for that. We have 3 solutions. One solution is really building ground level, we call it, a skills architecture, a skills taxonomy. We generate it automatically. And of course, the organization can calibrate and adjust it, configure it to their needs. And we have a talent acquisition solution, basically providing a search and a match, a ranking of the pipeline of the candidates, and an explainability with explainable AI, explaining why that person is recommended to the position, the open position, and a talent management solution, basically creating a marketplace within the organization, connecting employees to job opportunities, whether it's a project, an open position, learning, and so forth. And all that provides insights, right, to HR. So on each of those models, we have very specific KPIs to show value. So for hiring, for example, the time to hire, we can say we work with a very large company, and usually we would come and integrate to the system of record. So we ingest the data from the system of record and provide the insights about what we think about that person. Is it a good recommendation? Should we move forward with that person? Yes, no, and why? Tremendous results in terms of you've now lowered, if 40% of the time of a recruiter is spent on search, now we've lowered it by 50, 55%, whatever it is. So that's significant efficiency we bring into that. So that's what we're tracking constantly.
Awesome. So I didn't realize you had some of the capabilities that people might look to, like a talent, internal talent marketplace for. I mean, that would be the purpose of, or the benefit of pulling all of that data together, like you said, to do the skills development, to look for a mentor, to understand, maybe some career paths and opportunities that you hadn't thought
Exactly.
of, because maybe it's a lateral or maybe it's a diagonal move, right? No, people don't need to climb straight up the
Vertical.
ladder anymore, right? So one question I have for you about, like, not necessarily specific skills, but categories of skills. I remember I try to keep up with some of the World Economic Forum stuff. So obviously you're closer to this than me, but couldn't help but notice that when it looks at like some of the most in-demand skills for like 2030, they're not like technical skills at all, right? They're more like what we used to call soft skills, which I like to call human and durable
Right.
skills. So I was curious to get your take on that.
So people call it power skills, or there's a lot of names to that. And I
Yeah,
think it's about the ability to adjust and learning, continuous learning. And so it can be with AI for sure. We need to have that ability to be flexible, to be adjustable, to be adaptable, right? And to learn fast. And we see also, by the way, that women, there's only a third of them that is using, if you compare it to male, those kind of tools, GPT, whatever it is, LLMs, and that's a problem. So women actually need to augment that ability, not
yeah,
be afraid of that. But I do think I'm very optimistic about the usage of AI. I think people are taking this as an opportunity now to upskill and quickly learn, and you can see the benefits. Although some of them are still there's still errors, hallucinations in the LLMs we're using, but still you see the benefits, and so it incentivizes everybody to use more and more and be more efficient. So those skills I think are super important.
I was just working with a group. I signed myself up. I gotta take my own advice. I signed myself for an agentic workflow sort of boot camp. I was curious, I guess, how you see maybe the agentic workflow stuff evolving, and how that may alter not necessarily the in demand.
Hello, this is Michael Vandervoort from the Drive Through HR podcast, where we discuss ideas, trends, and activities that impact HR, talent, HR technology, and the workplace. Our focus is on expanding knowledge and igniting curiosity as we hear directly from people who are shaping the future of the HR industry. Join us.
Skills. I mean, it could add to some skills that would be valuable if you're going to implement something like that. But I guess I wonder if it alters the timeline for some of the projections.
I think it's
Yeah.
going to be much faster than what we're thinking. I think that's the difference between all the technologies that we've seen until now. The adoption was fast, but this one is going to be much faster.
Yeah.
I think it's the tip of the iceberg, really, and I'm very excited about it. I think it's and that's why again we come back to the skills we need. So continuous learning, fast learning, and be open to that innovation that is happening. Not be fearful of it. It's not going to replace you. It's going to enhance you. Of course, it's going to replace a few things that you would have done otherwise, but it's maybe better, right? Because you don't want to do that manual work. You don't want to do that tedious work. If you can write a summary faster or have a PowerPoint much better, why not? Who needs to do it, really?
I find myself in an interesting spot, and I'm curious to get your perspective on this as well. But like, I spent most of my career, and I continue to spend a lot of my time thinking about innovation, not just innovation, but like innovation management, and how do you sort of guide, the best ideas forward and build teams around them and things like that. But more recently, with my sort of responsible AI, hat on, you've got to recognize that there's a balance, right? And so I do wonder, and I guess I'm cautiously optimistic that this will come to pass. But I just worry that people, when anyone can build something and they know they can start generating revenue from it, or is the very concept of and ease of setting up an agentic workflow going to trigger a whole nother wave of tidal wave, perhaps, of just like shiny objects?
Well, at the end of the day, it's the data that you're using in the algorithms, right? If you're pulling from data that is erroneous, right? So you're going to get results that are not really good. But I think we're getting better at this. So you see GPT, for example, you still see hallucination. You will see it's not trained on a specific context. So there are now very specialized LLMs, right? And or you see vendors taking it to the next level of making sure it's responsible, it has less errors, it's not biased, it's not causing any security or privacy breach, right? It's kind of under a specific guardrail. So, you cannot stop the innovation, and it can coexist with regulation and some limitations. That's okay.
Yep.
We just need to make sure we're using it correctly, because not all tools are equal. So you want to make sure you're using the right tools for the right purpose.
I guess one of the things I think about is instilling in founders or aspiring founders some of the things that you established from the beginning. So in a way, Retrain.ai is one of those companies who are a good model to follow in the sense of being responsible by design and thinking about, the ethics and the fairness of these decisions, the transparency of, its output and things like that from the beginning. And I hope, like I said, I'm cautiously optimistic that people follow that. I'm bracing myself for some nonsense.
Well, I think we started when it was really hard to talk about AI. People were not understanding yet in 2020, 2021. I was saying the word taxonomy. I was saying the word NLP. People were not understanding what I'm saying. Now I have people that understand very well and are looking for very specific, and they have very intentional challenges that they want to solve with specific results and goals. So I'm very happy about that maturity level. And definitely, when I was talking about responsible AI at the time, people were totally not getting it. And my co-founder was saying, Isabelle, don't talk about it because people don't get it. And I said, but this is something critical, and you're going to see that later on. It's going to be discussed. And now it's, on everybody's top of mind as well, because when you want to implement a technology, you want to make sure you assess it for the specific criteria of ethical, responsible AI. So I'm happy about that maturity and adoption level now of all those terms and understanding what it means and how to more and more how to implement, because it needs a lot of still understanding.
Yeah, I think that I should not have been surprised that was slow to enter people's consciousness and vocabulary. Because we weren't talking about this at all when I was at IBM and we were watching, IBM Watson come out of the labs. That sort of predictive AI, analytical AI was different, right? Because the average person wasn't interacting with it and wasn't taking its output and running with it. We've had Google search results for quite a while, and those were always, suspect for certain, inquiries. But I just feel like, yeah, it was definitely generative AI that really made people start thinking about, do I trust these things? And so, like you said, there's a maturity that needs to occur, and some people, luckily, many vendors are starting to catch on that this is what it means to be a trusted partner in the age of AI, is to be responsible by design.
Yeah, for sure.
I was curious about just with your background with doing like contingent hiring. One of the things that I've talked to folks about is assessing, not just assessing skills gaps, et cetera, but the skills intelligence that an organization may have. If you're using contingent labor through like a vendor management platform or something like that, if you were to connect, retrain, or just thinking more broadly, if an
Mhm.
organization is trying to get a 360 degree view of all the available talent, how do you see like contingent, playing into that? Is that like,
Well,
you
that's a big
know,
piece, but we're not covering that piece. We're
yeah,
covering the ones that you have in your pipeline currently. So
yeah,
active pipeline, you have the passive ones. Actually, let's be very, very specific about you past candidates, people that applied,
yep,
let's say 2 years ago. We call it the omni-channel, meaning that we're bringing all those pipelines in one mainstream channel. And we also look at the internal employees. So you have also people with an organization of 80,000 employees, right? There's a lot of people that could be actually transitioning. Instead of leaving you to someone else, they could actually either upskill and move or just move because they're a good fit and you don't know about them and they don't know about that opportunity that is there available. And there's another stream, the stream of the passive, the ones that is outsourced. That we have a very large talent network that has more than 500 million resumes that we can tap into. So bringing all those four different pipelines into one omni-channel. So when a recruiter opens a position, opens a requisition, we understand the different criteria that we're looking for, and then we compare it to all those different candidates from all those different streams into one channel. So it's very efficient for the recruiter to pull everybody all together and see how they rank against that specific open requisition. Contingent workforce is definitely something that we have in mind. The VMS that exists could be a great source of data, also external as well. So there's a lot of different networks of contingent workers out there, and the gig economy, it's growing. Definitely a very good market to go into. But we're very focused on what we're doing right now to make it better and better and better. And then we're going to add more pieces to it, such as the contingent workforce. But I definitely, many years ago, I was thinking this is a great market to go into. And that's why we see also the Fiverr of the world,
yep,
all those different platforms. Definitely great success there.
yeah. I think that's certainly something that I pay attention to, just because I think about, like, if you identify those skills gaps, being able to look, anywhere, and if a lot of the good talent prefers to be, you'll still find them on, probably LinkedIn and other places. It's not like they only exist on the Fivers and Upworks of the world,
Yeah.
but certainly there's huge amount of talent that chooses to work that way. I was curious, just in terms of, as you pay attention to everything that's going on, as you think about it, whether you're wearing your investor hat on or your lawyer hat on, as you think about some of the solutions that you're playing with, anything interesting that you have been playing with for yourself, or for Retrain, or it could be in your personal life. I'm just curious if there's anything that piques your interest.
Well, out of the HR tech, there's a lot of things that are making me very curious about what's going on in healthcare. I think it's a
Okay.
huge, huge opportunity there. The way it works right now is totally broken, but that's aside. In HR tech, I think we're really the forefront of it. We're bringing that, and the vendors out there are also the ones I usually compete with. Are great. It's a great competition to be in. Everybody's trying to help HRs on that, journey to find people, to retain people, to upskill people. We're all doing the best we can, and the models are improving. The generations, are growing. So we're bringing really the most advanced algorithms there. And there are some vendors that need to restack. what makes me excited, it's not actually the shiny objects, not agents or chatbots. It's really the data and the results that we're seeing. If you want to match a person to a position, so the accuracy, the precision, the recall, all those metrics have to be, high. You want to continuously improve on that. You want to have explainable and AI and reduce biases, constantly show recruiters why they could actually look for other candidates based on skills, based on different potential attributes. So that's for me exciting. So I'm not going after next shiny objects. There's always going to be more. I'm really looking into the data and the algorithms layer.
No, that makes total sense. I think these hallucinations, we know, the big vendors are working on that foundational model kind of vendors. I don't mean, domain vendors, but I think there's definitely a lot of improvement there. And especially in talent acquisition, it just seems like now that you've got potentially like 10x the applications, right? And they're AI generated resumes and CVs, and everything's starting to look the same, both in the inputs and the way it's evaluating. It's like, what are we doing here?
Yeah, it's a play also of the data that you have and the sources that you're fusing all together. 360 picture about the person and enrich the data. So we work with organization, and it could be pretty challenging just to work with a large organization in terms, not just because, they have a lot of stakeholders and there's a lot of people that are going to make the decision and you need to consult with and you need to bring everybody into the room and so forth. It's not just that. It's because the data is lacking, right? So even if you have an HCM, the data you have there about people is not enough, or it's out of date, or it's actually wrong.
Hey, this is Brent Skinner, host of Small Talk Window here at the Work Defined Podcasting Network. Have you ever wanted a short podcast to listen to during a coffee break of your workday? You've come to the right place. My guests dispense with the small talk as quickly as possible and settle into a meaningful conversation around the world of work.
It's just non-existent. So you need to enrich that data. So at the end of the day, we're a data company, right? So we help and we say, okay, don't worry. The heavy lifting is on us. If you don't have the data about role descriptions, right, you don't. We have what we call our generic layer, which is in the context of the industry. So we have all the different role descriptions for finance or for healthcare or for retail or for luxury goods, whatever it is, for semiconductors. We do have it, and then you can start from that. So the cold start problem is solved there because you have a base layer to start with to calibrate and configure, which we also developed tools to make it seamless. Because in the beginning, it was hard. You tell HRs, well, you need to now work and adjust it to your organization unique value proposition. We don't want HRs to work for us. We want the technology to work for them. So they put a lot of efforts into having now calibration tools, and it's improving constantly with the customers that we work with to make sure that they don't spend a lot of time on this. And they have that a seamless start. So the deployment, the data, the fact that you need to integrate into an ecosystem, right?
Yep.
So all that is definitely challenging, but it's part of what we're doing constantly to improve.
Oh, that's awesome. People don't necessarily understand. I've been asked by some C-suite folks, like, is data governance still important? Is data quality still important? I'm like, okay, that's like the lifeblood of all of this, right? So the foundational capabilities, anyone who is up the sort of data and analytics sort of maturity curve is already much better positioned to be able to deploy AI in a responsible way and to get, to mitigate, hallucinations and have more trustworthy output right from the start.
Yeah.
So when we think about AI literacy, which I know, you're a huge advocate for, and we think about what organizations need to do. I mean, as you go and talk to clients and prospects, and I know you do other, sort of events and community types of things, how do you think about, sort of upskilling and AI readiness overall for organizations?
Well, I think now that if I had to draw it, I would say that the Gartner hype cycle is kind of a good visual for that, to really show that technology, the user expectations have in that maturity cycle. We were seeing that people were not yet matured in terms of understanding AI, understanding how to deploy AI. Even the SBO, skills-based organization concept, was still very nascent. So you can say the spark of innovation, people started to get very excited about that. Again, if we talk about numbers, there's not a lot of them starting to do it in the early days, like 3 years ago. And still today, I think it's in the 30% deployment, really. Again, there's a lot of different stats, so I'm not sure what is the right one, but I tend to agree that it's not that much yet that have adopted, but they're now very into adoption. They want to start adopting. They understand the problem well. And in the maturity cycle, now after facing those, maybe the dissolution even happened after a few 1-2 years, and say, okay, yeah, it's not going to solve everything, okay, and it's not going to save humanity yet. It's the beginning. And well, now that we understand what reality is, now we have realistic expectations. Now we can really, with those realistic expectations, have a deployment with realistic outcomes. But the beautiful thing is that there's another visual of another graph, linear graph, that goes like this, which is the performance of the technology. That even if you had that expectations and then the dissolution, and then again now kind of a realistic outcomes, now that performance is actually getting better. So I think now we're really meeting, and we're actually better than the expectations. So, and the maturity is there. So now people want to adopt. They have great questions. I love to talk to HRs to learn from them and see how I can help and improve constantly. So that's kind of what I'm seeing in the market. In terms of literacy, I think we still see that there's fear, and still people, again, I talked about the gender, you can say, gap there, that only a third of women are really using AI at work or at home compared to men. But it's an opportunity for us, because if that's the problem, so let's upskill. I read a very interesting article. I was tagged on, I can send you the reference after, but it said good girls are good, the good girl syndrome or something like that, using AI. So women tend to think, and again, I'm not saying I'm specifically 100% agreeing with this, but I think it's an interesting aspect. Women tend to be, you want to be perfect. When you say something, you want to make sure it's accurate. That's kind of a women tendency, versus men that can just throw it into the air and say, well, I'm not sure, but I'm saying it loud enough, so I guess I'm confident enough, and it makes everybody feel comfortable too. But so women have that tendency to be perfect and not cheat. You don't ever to cheat on anything. So AI can make you cheat, right? Because you're cheating the system. You're summarizing, or something else is doing it instead of you. So that could be one of those reasons for women not to use AI, to feel that they're cheating. Specifically, I think it's actually augmenting what we can do, and have more time to do the things that are meaningful. So good girl using AI syndrome could be part of that kind of explanation. Not sure it's true, but definitely interesting to read and try to understand what is it. But I think it's an opportunity, and 70% or even more of HRs are women. So definitely we need to upskill continuously and then seize that opportunity.
I got to check that out. It honestly doesn't surprise me, but I think it hits on one of the points that I always make, which is when we talk about like appropriate use of AI, like don't outsource your own critical thinking. And it sounds like men have a tendency to do that too often. But yeah, I mean, when you think about, of course, getting into the ethics of how and when to use it, I've talked to people in the education system about this. I know it comes up a lot. It comes up with college admissions. It comes up in whether you're in undergrad, grad school, or even earlier than that in high school. Mm-hmm. So these are things that I think are important to think about. And then if we can get young women, engaged even sooner when they're teenagers, then hopefully we can fix that stat.
I totally agree, and I am a mentor in a few initiatives. There's an organization called Unistream. It's actually specifically in Israel, but it helps youth in the peripheral areas, geography and economic areas, to take kids from the age of 13 to 17 through high school to a program where they build products and they actually launch it until the end of when they graduate. So bringing them into the center of the Israeli tech, which is amazing, right?
Absolutely.
And gaining those entrepreneurial skills. So I was mentoring a judge, very involved in this organization, and also mentoring youth here in New York, New Jersey. Again, kids that are 13 to 17, building products for the year with great, and usually the purpose is for helping other kids. So and it's that literacy, right? And there's a lot of girls there. I have to say, I'm super excited about that. We had the group, and I made two girls co-CEOs, 13 years old. It was amazing to see. They took that responsibility very, very well, and they competed national level, pitched in front of a lot of people, not being afraid. At this stage, I'm not sure I would have been able to do it when I was 13. So I was really excited to see girls doing this.
We're going to have to talk more about that offline, because this is exactly what I proposed to my daughter's a junior in high school. This is exactly what I just proposed to her superintendent and board of education and superintendent of curriculum.
Well, we're replicating it everywhere, so it's a great program. I'll send you the details.
All right, yeah, let's talk about that. But yeah, I think within organizations, I think it's inevitable that there will be some sort of, just like we have training on when you onboard, and then on some regular basis around, data privacy and harassment and cybersecurity and all these things to try to mitigate, weak links essentially, and bad behavior. I think it's inevitable that we'll have some like responsible AI kind of module in there, and then depending on roles, you'll have other, training and upskilling, obviously. But I just think some foundational, course, even if it's only an hour or whatever, it's better than nothing. Just so at least people will think a little bit more about the output of some of the things that they could be not just using but building. Right? They can build their own agents and co-pilots and GPTs now. So they're probably going to do it, because even when we see adoption rates at companies like you were talking about before in the 25, 30%, maybe 35% range, the sort of shadow AI use is more than double that, right? If you ask the employees, it's probably like 80% have tried it. Whether they've tried it for a work use case is maybe different, but they're already playing with it, which is exactly what I told the school administrators. Like, your kids are using it. If you tell them not to, then they're going to use it more.
No, you can't. You have to embrace it. And exploration, continuous exploration. I have to say, I'm not keeping up with all the different things that are coming out. I'm glad about it. I'm super excited every time my son is coming up with, did you check this? I'm like, no, let's check it.
It's a lot. It's a lot to keep up with. Even with my probably 15 different AI newsletters, it's just a lot. Isabelle, this has been really great. I want to be respectful of your time. I really appreciate you taking some time to talk to me and share your insights with my audience. So thank you again.
Thank you for having me. It's a great pleasure. And definitely we need to connect on all the different initiatives that are out there in the tri-state area.
Perfect. All right. Thank you so much.
Sounds good.
Thanks, everyone, for listening. That concludes another episode of Elevate Your AIQ. We'll see you next time.